Welcome to the Resilient and Resourced podcast, where you'll hear conversations with regular but strong-hearted people who explore resilience and discuss the role of resources and connections in their lives. I'm your host, Annette Adams, and on today's episode, you get to hear how I first met my guest and my friend, Lisa, several years ago. This conversation was recorded about a month ago, so the hope that the longer, lighter days are bringing us is even more relevant now than it was then. Lisa calls herself an open book who thrives on making real connections with others, and that's what makes this conversation so heartwarming. She's a strong proponent of being real with those around her so that she can get support when she needs it and give support when others need it. With creativity and an optimism that still honors difficult emotions, Lisa has found methods of staying hopeful and resilient through this pandemic year. As a newbie podcaster, I made the mistake of stopping the recording too soon because we ended up talking for another 20 minutes after that, and I was blown away again by how real, passionate, and direct Lisa is. You're in for a treat, so join the conversation. Okay, I'm so excited to have Lisa here today on the podcast. Welcome here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here today.
Great. So the first time I met you, it was very memorable, in fact. I was invited out with a group of women to have a drink, and I almost said no. I was tired from a long day at work, a lot of social interaction at work, and wasn't really happy about having to go out at night and kind of make small talk with people that I didn't really know. We had a few mutual friends. And so you and I ended up sitting right next to each other, and you turned to me and said, "So, Danette, tell me something about yourself, what you're passionate about. Just tell me something." You didn't ask me, what my job was, how many kids I had, or anything like that. It was like, just tell me something meaningful. And I was like blown away because that was the opposite of small talk, and I loved it. It was awesome. Can't remember how I responded, but that was my first interaction with you. And so I knew I wanted to have you on a podcast about, heart forward people who just, make a difference in the world and just really want to talk about things that matter. So I would love for you to start telling me a little bit about you. And so instead of asking, what your job is and all that kind of stuff, what matters to you and what resilience means to you.
Wow. Well, I certainly remember our first meeting and interaction as well. And you certainly made quite an impact on me. And I think you're so genuine, and I just love our conversation. So thanks so much for having me here to talk today. So I guess about me, I'm an open book, perhaps too much. So if I go to buy something at the store, the cashier knows exactly what it's for because I tell them my life story. So I like to get real with people. I hate the "how are you? I'm fine, thanks" BS. Just how are you really? Like, especially right now during COVID, this is such a messed up time. And if we can't be real with each other, we're not going to get the support we need. So I welcome quality answers and enough of the politeness. Nobody cares anymore for the fine thanks. I asked the question for a reason, not just to have a generic answer. You know what I mean? I want the truth so I can be there to support people. I'm a very large proponent of women supporting women, especially in the workforce. I think there's plenty enough room for all of us to shine, and enough challenges to overcome without one another's support. So love the conversations and connecting with women especially, and just the support and being each other's cheerleaders, I think is so, so important. You asked about resilience, what I think of that, and I kind of think about my life and how I've had a really great life. I haven't had some difficult childhood I needed to overcome. I have great parents, and I think they set me up with a good foundation to be resilient.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, like when I was 15, my dad said, "When you go to university, we can't afford to pay for it. So I'll help you do a resume. I'll drive you around to hand them out, and you need to get a job." So I did. I started working 45 hours a week while I was in high school when I was 15. So I was working at Eastside Mario's. I was working nearly every night, split shifts on the weekend, and I loved it. I really loved it. And I was able to put myself through university and graduate debt free. And I paid for the whole thing myself. And the confidence that gave me, knowing that I can rely on myself and I can do things, has set me up so beautifully for the rest of my life. So I think my resilience started with having parents show me that I can be resilient. You can do things on your own. So I'm really grateful for having that experience and having just loving, terrific, supportive parents.
Right. That's amazing. So, as a parent yourself now, do you see you offering sort of the same supports to your own children that your parents did, or offering that same encouragement for strength and for relying on yourself, becoming self-reliable,
I
self-reliant, sorry.
I am, and of course, the mummy guilt weighs in for everything. Should be doing this. I should be doing that. But then I like to excuse some of my requests for them to do things for themselves with the confidence in knowing how that will serve them well in the future. You know, they're 9 and 11. Yes, you can make your own breakfast. You can make your own lunch. You can help clean. You can pick up after yourselves. Like I know a lot of people might make all the meals for their kids, and that's fine if that works well for them. But I'm trying, and I'm busy as well. Let's not kid ourselves. During COVID, I'm working full time at home, and my kids have been doing distance learning from home since September. So we're all here fending for ourselves in a lot of ways.
Right.
So teaching them to be able to do some things for themselves has not only been important, but just necessary.
Right. So you talked about the pandemic earlier when we started the conversation, and then brought it up again now. So, what have the challenges been for you during this pandemic? So, when you talk about being resilient and making it through tough times, and you didn't have to do that in your childhood, but what have been some of the challenges during the pandemic for you and your family?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it was most challenging really in the spring, kind of when we were just getting into it, and it was super scary because we didn't really know what it would be like. Um, we didn't know food security. We didn't know so many things. Just that to me was scarier, and just the children trying to get used to some of their online schooling, which in the spring was extremely challenging. At the same time, my work had never been busier. So a little history as well. I had taken 8.5 years out of my career to be a stay-at-home mom, and had only recently in the last couple of years gone back to work. So when it came to asking for help, the children had been conditioned to come to me to ask for that help because I had been home with them for many years. So I really needed to work with my husband to have him, support the children in their at home learning, as he had a little bit more bandwidth than I did at the time, and that's working fabulously now. He's really stepped up, and the kids have learned that they can ask him because he is home, he is there, and he's giving great help there. So that's been really important. Yeah, it's interesting. We made a challenging decision, obviously, with the school right across the street to keep our kids home this year. I know that wasn't the most popular decision. I know that many of their friends are going to school outside of the lockdowns, of course. Passing by our house in the mornings and afternoon as they go to and fro, because the school is literally across the street. But both of us working from home, we just felt it was the safest option for our family. And I understand every family has their own decisions and challenges and circumstances that would make their decisions different for their family. So I appreciate that as well.
And how are your children then finding the parts that people would be concerned about? So the social connections, about keeping kids home during the pandemic. So how are your children faring?
That's a really good question. Initially, we had kind of coupled up with two other families that also were keeping their kids home. Um, and had, some cancer in the family where they had to be very careful, and we trusted that they were being very careful, and we would actually have the kids 2 times a week come together to do the distance learning together side by side, just to give them a little bit of that face-to-face socialization, and a lot of play dates with those families as well. We thought was pretty important. Additionally, they are making friends in their classes. Yes, it's distance learning, but they have a lot of breakout groups, and they are actually making relationships, albeit virtually, with their classmates. And for them, because they started off in this distance learning program this year, most of the kids in their class they've never met, as it was kind of a conglomeration of kids from around the region. So it is different than just now the children that are just at home with a regular class and teacher. For my children, a lot of the kids in their class they had never seen before. So they did have to make an effort to build those relationships.
That's going to be interesting then after the pandemic, that they may have new friends that they've made online that aren't in their class at school, but they may still be able to maintain connections or meet outside of school and do things. It's kind of going to be an interesting situation once school returns back into, face to face.
Yes, and please God soon.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound, right? We have the kids home. So I suppose likely until next September, provided that there aren't any more hangups with the vaccine and so on, they should be back in class then. So it's going to be interesting, you're right, to see how they re-engage in a live environment. Certainly there's been a lot less drama this year. There's no school drama coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. So your kids then would be in middle school, right?
So
So
they're in
we're
grade
talking
4
like
and 6.
Okay, so it's the middle schools where all the drama, if I remember correctly, a lot of the drama is in the grade 7 and 8. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
okay. So I want to talk veer a little bit now towards some strengths, and I want to say that when you and I first met after that first meeting, then we were at a girls' cottage weekend, and I found out that you had so many other things on the way up to the cottage. You and I chatted in the car, and you told me about the work you're doing and how much you just love your work. Like you were just so passionate about your work. And then I get there and find out how passionate you are about cooking. And you showed us pictures of like amazing meals, and you made us an amazing fish dinner. And then I find out during the pandemic you took up painting. Like you just seem to me this font of creativity. And I just want to know what you see as your strengths, like something that you just love about yourself.
Oh my goodness. Um, wow. It's hard to talk about what we love about ourselves, isn't it? Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I think one thing I really am so proud about is having real connections with people. And I'm a total empath, which can be a disservice to myself at points. But I really feel things deeply, and I feel that I can be there for my friends in a really deep, compassionate way. And to me, that is one of the biggest things I'm proud of. Yes, I do love cooking. I do love painting now, which I have just taken up during the pandemic. I hadn't painted in 30 years, and I find it a beautiful escape, almost a vacation into the canvas as we're locked down and confined to our houses. But to me, the thing I'm most proud about myself, I think, is that my friends would say that they have a real connection that's not just superficial. It's deeper, and they know that. I hope they know. If you don't know friends, please know you can come to me with anything, and I really will be there for you.
Yeah, and I see that and recognize that in you. As having only known you for less than 2 years, I think that is very, very clear from the first moment I met you. So now we've talked about some of the challenges of the pandemic and things that you love about yourself. And I want to know what resources you tap into regularly to maintain this? So to maintain your passion and love about your work and your creative outlets and supporting your children at home and maintaining your own sense of resilience. So, what kind of resources do you tap in regularly?
Wow. I love to chat with my parents throughout the week. As I started off the conversation, they've always been there for me and extremely supportive, and helps to keep me grounded. So I certainly reach out to them for a sense of support always throughout my life, and will continue to do so. Um, as I referenced earlier as well, my husband's been very supportive. My job has been crazy busy, but I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. In my job, I get to help people, and it just feels so good. But during this time, these companies that I help have needed extra help. So it's been just a super busy time. So my husband's picked up the slack with respect to dinner. He makes dinner now nearly every night. I love to cook, but we wouldn't be eating till like 8 o'clock if he didn't step up. And he has been doing a super, super job at helping there to keep the family going and functioning and fed. So certainly that. And friends, having our virtual chats with the ladies sometimes, and so on. That's a nice way to think this will end, and gives us some hope for things to look forward to, our girls' cottage weekends and so on to come. I think it's important to have things to look forward to, and hold on to that, just to keep you energized and optimistic throughout this weird time where there is no end date per se.
Right. Although we can see sort of light at the end of the tunnel it's feeling a little bit more hopeful. I just feel like the beginning of this new year, there has been a tiny bit more hope. And when I look outside and it's, even just a hint of sun, it just feels a little bit more like we're coming near the end. But like you're right, we don't have an end date yet. We don't know when it's coming.
Yeah. And I think too that what I found really hard last year was the conflict in the world. The maskers versus the anti-maxers, the vaxxers versus the anti-vaxxers, the politics, the anti-black movement, which I completely agree with, but then the fighting and police brutality and everything that ensued from that. And I just found this whole conflict in the world very hard for me to deal with as an empath. It hurt my heart. So I think too, with the new U.S. government, I'm feeling much more optimistic as well, that should help to ease some of this conflict in the world. With vaccines coming forth as approved, I'm feeling as well optimistic as well with respect to COVID. So I agree. I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel now, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some change soon.
Yeah. And just feeling that, to me, hope is one of my resources, is that I keep drawing on to make it through the spring sort of thing, because we still have a couple more months of winter that a lot of people find really challenging when it's darker and colder. And we just talked earlier about not getting outside very much.
Yes.
And staying in a lot. And so we just need to kind of hold on to our resources and draw on them through the rest of this winter into the spring, when we get outside, we'll feel a little bit more invigorated. And
yeah, absolutely. I love how you said hope is a resource of yours, because it truly is. Hope and excitement for something in the future, I think, is a fantastic thing to draw on. And positive distractions. We bought, in the end of October, we bought a really crappy cottage on a beautiful property. And it's required a lot of work so far. There were, I think, 6 active leaks in the roof. We ended up removing 5 tons of garbage. We had a 500-foot long mud driveway. Anyway, we have plans, obviously, for the spring to continue the work there. And that's just such a fun distraction through this, to have something to look forward to and something else to think about. And I found with my work, I'm very productive. And with my extracurricular activities like painting and so on, I found being productive is empowering too. And it gives you a sense of control. as well over the situation. And I think as much as we can, without being hard on ourselves if we can't be productive, right? Because there are times too when I just want to lay down and I don't want to get up for a long time, and that's fine too, right? Just honoring our body, our mind, our spirit, what we feel we need at that time.
Right, like befriending ourselves instead of being a harsh critic on you should be doing more of this or shouldn't be doing that or whatever. Yeah. My therapist just said to me yesterday, like sometimes you just need to get off your own back. Like just lay off and like let yourself be unproductive or be productive. Like do whatever. You're honoring yourself. So yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
I've been honoring myself a lot without doing any exercise in about 12 months. There's a season for everything, Danette. It'll be fine.
Exactly. Absolutely. For sure. So I want to know, as we sort of wind down our talk a little bit now, I want to know if you would have some advice for people who might be struggling. They might be struggling with hope. They might be struggling with not being kind or not befriending themselves, or just sort of feeling like, how am I going to make it through these next few months? Maybe they're like you, a parent working from home and having kids at home. Do you have some sort of advice based on your own sense of resilience and, relying on yourself, but also your resources that you've drawn into you?
Oh, good question. I think that, bringing into the honoring yourself part as well, that if you are feeling really down, that's okay too. And if you're having a really sad day, like I cried from December 23rd to December 25th, nearly nonstop, that's okay too. Those are valid feelings, and this is a weird time, and just as valid as being happy, but just not to get stuck there. Work through it, but let it out. Let it out. I mean, go punch a wall. I don't know. Let it out. But it's okay. My point is, you can't be happy all the time. That's not realistic. It's a highly emotional time for some people. And I find when I'm so productive, I don't think about things. And then when I slow down, kind of the gravity of the situation hits me, and that's where I have some tears shed for a couple of days, and then I get back going. But just don't get stuck there. Reach out to friends, talk to your partner if you have a partner, and it's okay to know that that you don't have to be strong all the time. That someone can carry you for a while, and that's okay. And then just try and reciprocate. Reciprocate where you can, because someone can't carry you all the time. But we will get through this. People have gotten through far worse. One thing I wanted to say as well is, like, I don't know how you're going to meld this in, so if you don't worry about it. But when I had my first daughter, it was a very scary labor. And I had no birth plan. The only plan I had was, it's going to suck, and then I'm going to get to hold my baby. And what had happened was her heart rate suddenly decelerated because the cord got tied around her neck, and they had to, very quickly get her out of me. And my, what's it called? The pain medicine, what is it called? The epidural didn't work.
Okay.
It didn't work, and I wasn't frozen anywhere, and it was quite painful, very scary. And then they rushed her out of the room to help save her life. I didn't have that moment. Like, I knew it was going to be hard, it was going to suck, and then I thought I'd hold my baby, but there was no holding the baby. The baby was out of the room, and I ended up having PTSD from that. And I felt really guilty about having PTSD, because at the end of the day, I had a healthy baby. Yeah. At the end of the day, I was fine. And I thought, there's a lot of people that don't come home with a baby in some of those circumstances. What right do I have to have PTSD over this? I have these feelings. But something I really learned from that, and speaking with the therapist as well, is that you can't judge yourself against other people's experiences. Your experiences are your experiences, and to honoring those feelings, and that's okay. Just because someone's had a harder life doesn't mean your feelings don't matter. Does that make sense?
Aren't valid.
Yeah.
Yes, you're validating your own experience
Yeah.
and your own feelings. Yeah, I love that. That feels like a theme of your life. So what's come out of this conversation, what I know about you is honoring yourself, and part of that means knowing that you're really strong and can handle things, but also knowing that there's times you're going to break down and you need help from other people and you're going to reach out and ask for that. So it's basically honoring whatever comes up. That seems like, whether it's, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the scary stuff, but you're strong and resilient, but you also reach out to resources, which is what I love. That's what I love about you.
It goes back to the open book. And if I'm having something exciting in my life, I'm going to tell someone. If I'm having something scary in my life, I'm going to tell someone.
Yeah.
And that's how I deal in the world, with this open communication. I took, as I said earlier, I took 8.5 years off from work. I shouldn't say from work, to be a stay-at-home mom, which is damn hard, as you know. But when I decided to re-enter the workforce, holy crap, was that ever scary? Thinking, do I still have valid skills? What value do I still have to offer? Oh my gosh. But yeah, again, through a lot of conversations with some good friends who were like, you got this. And now I absolutely love my job. And I think friends, connections, communication is where it's at, Danette.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has just been a fabulous conversation. I feel like I know so much more about you now, and where your energy comes from, being an empath and being an open book, being honest. You can see that you're caring for yourself, and that gives you the space and the energy to care for other people in a way. So I love that about you. Yeah.
Thanks,
And I'm so
Danette. And
happy to
I
have
love
this
you, and I
conversation.
can't wait to hug you again.
We will be able to do that soon. Let's just start planning that next cottage weekend and it'll all be good.
I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for this chat. I can't wait to see you in person. And until then, until our next girls chat, let's take good care of yourself and your
You too,
family.
Danette. Thank you. Love
Okay.
you.